Hello, how are you today? Oh my goodness, you are going to so enjoy our episode today. What is it like to volunteer at the US Naval Academy or travel to Russia or travel to Malaysia? Today's guest has done all of those things and many more, including writing 25 books. She'll also help us learn how to answer the very important marketing question, what's in it for them? We're going to explain what that means in just a moment. Hi, I'm Patricia Durgan, the Christian Message Coach, and this is Marketers on a Mission. We present marketing tutorials and interviews to help Christian writers and speakers take their message online. This is episode number 122. My guest author, Karen Writing. Hello, Karen. How are you?
I'm great, Patricia. So good to be with you.
You are always a font of knowledge. I'm not sure how many people know how much you know. I know that you're very popular as a speaker and a writer. And what we're going to do is we're going to just touch on your life for a moment. Then we're going to talk about your speaking, your writing, your books, and then we'll get to that marketing element. Is that all right with you?
Sure.
Okay, great. Your voice and your voice, your demeanor, your spirit is very gentle and quiet, not too quiet, not too gentle, but you're much more of an adventurer than someone could tell just by looking at you physically, aren't you?
Yes, I guess so. With 5 children and a Coast Guard husband who's up in heaven now, I certainly had to be adventurous, and I grew up in the countryside, so that makes you adventurous anyway.
And tell us how you and your husband served at the US Naval Academy.
Well, we served with Officer Christian Fellowship with the Bible studies and fellowship that they had. That did include one night a week. We had Bible study, another night was fellowship, sometimes guest speakers, retreats. Sometimes the women's retreat was right at my house. It was all sorts of things that we did, tailgate parties at football games. So there was some sort of fun mixed in with everything. And I baked dinner and brought it over for 10 years, basically, on Thursday evenings for Bible study that included homemade bread, because they just love that homemade bread.
So now we're going to talk about that element in your marketing and in your book in a moment, more on a more deep scale. But I didn't realize you'd had this love affair with bread for so many years.
Oh, I grew up making bread from the time I was able to bake, able to stir in a bowl, because my grandparents, 2 houses from me, had a restaurant. My uncle next to me had a restaurant, and everybody in the family made bread, my mother included, so there was always homemade bread and bread making.
It must have been really interesting, almost 4 decades. It must have been very interesting to watch these young naval officers come and go, develop and mature.
Navy. I was 10 years at the Naval Academy. I don't remember how many years at the Coast Guard Academy, and the other times we were with Officer Christian Fellowship wherever we were stationed. So Hawaii, Florida, Michigan, New York, anywhere. And yeah, we just did a lot, and it's always good to see them grow and develop, to come in from high school and really mature. That's a huge time of maturing for these young adults.
Mm-hmm. Were they always men, or did you have the time where there were women as well?
Oh, we had women and men at both academies all the time, and just really enjoyed all of that and enjoyed working with them. And even in between the 2 academies in Florida, I worked with a youth group with puppet ministry that was girls and boys that were high school and middle school. So I've worked with young people many years.
And then you were at home, and then you helped them as they matured.
Yes. But, it was great in Bible study, and to, even bringing people from, say, the C.S. Lewis Institute and things that really made them to dig in and think hard, and take them out in evangelism at times, and take them to work on a Habitat for Humanity or whatever was in the area. We would see if they wanted to sign up and go do it with them.
So y'all were definitely hands-on leaders.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Did any of your children, your 5 children, did they end up going to the Naval Academy or serving in the Navy or the Coast Guard?
No, Michael went to the Air Force Academy, my oldest son. A son-in-law went into the Army, And so it was, and my husband, of course, was Coast Guard Academy and Coast Guard graduate. And so we were, up there for quite a bit. I have a great nephew looking at the Coast Guard Academy now, but I'm not sure what he'll do.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about your adventures, but before I get sidetracked, I don't want to, let me back up. I want to talk more about your adventures, but I also have a question, a burning question, and it's to do with the lavender and the beautiful colors that you always wear. Is there a story behind that, or is it just your preference? Because that's fine too.
It's just my preference, and it's a royal color. So, among other books, I do have Raising a Young Modern Day Princess and the 1 Year My Princess Devotion. So wearing a royal color goes along with that anyway. Mm-hmm. And so it's just one of I like green and I like the lavender. So you'll see my website has both those colors.
I love that color on you. I know you just got some business photos, excuse me, some new business photos.
Yes.
Every one of them, you look like $1 million.
Oh, thank you. My daughter-in-law, it's nice having a daughter-in-law who's a professional photographer, and actually another daughter-in-law and a daughter who both studied some photography too.
Mm-mm-mm. So tell me, how did it, what was the sequence of events that you were invited to speak in Russia? That doesn't happen to everybody, by the way.
No, it doesn't. I had been writing for a long time, and among other things, I wrote for Focus on the Family's parenting magazines. And this camp in Russia, Christian camp, wrote to Focus on the Family to ask who they could get to speak. And they actually advised them to and connected them with Sandra Felton, a good friend of mine. And she said, well, I'm not really doing the family sort of thing that you want, but Karen Whiting does, and she writes for Focus. So then they contacted me, and my husband and I said, he's been to Russia. I haven't, but let's check this out, make sure it's legit. So I said, who do you have in the U.S. that has gone there? And they gave me names of missionaries. I lived in Maryland, and they were the missionaries were in Pennsylvania. So checked it out and found out it was fine. And I ended up going there and speaking for a week to, I was speaking to the lay leaders from churches all over the Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine and Russia were getting along better then. And they were to go back and start new family ministries at their churches. Oh. So it was really exciting to do that and have a translator all the time. And what I didn't know is the owner of the camp also owned a spa in Novorossiysk. We were on the Black Sea, and they gave me they said, stay an extra day or two. So I did, not knowing why. They gave me a cruise on the Black Sea and a spa day.
That must have been fabulous, was it?
It was. It was such a surprise. I didn't have any clue that I would be treated to that.
Nice. Did you travel from the U.S. by yourself to go and do this great thing?
I did, yes. When I went to China, I met up with one of the other people going, and we flew together from Texas.
You make it sound so casual.
Well, China was just last year, so I took my back by myself. So,
what was the occasion for last year's trip to China?
Well, last year's trip was actually through a division of Officer Christian Fellowship known as ACTS, Association of Christian Counseling and Training, and they work with military there, but they also work with other people. They work with the military in China, in fact, as well as the U.S. people stationed there, and they do some exchange programs with U.S. students at the academies, the cadets and midshipmen and plebes and everybody, to go to China, and some Chinese students come over here. But we were actually working with a private company that wanted me to come in and teach on creativity, to inspire creativity. They're having a problem that they work so hard in memorization to get into the universities, and they spend so many hours a day at school. They only get home at 5 p.m., and then they have 4 or 5 hours of more memorization, that they're losing some of their creativity. Mm-hmm. And yet, when you work with the children, you'll find any child has creativity. Their divergent thinking has not been suppressed when they're young enough.
Yes, absolutely. I don't understand all of that like you do, but I understand the concept that it is culture brings, kills it or tries to.
Well, schooling can. The culture will usually culture can inspire creativity if that's what they're rewarding. If they're rewarding that you get into university and it takes studying and passing exams, that's what they're inspiring people to do and learn.
But I believe that there's enough space and time and room in our lives for both. Do you?
I do, but again, as I said over there, they're not allowing the time. They're putting the children in school for hours and hours and then more homework. So there isn't time to inspire. We have to make sure we have a balance. That's why there's always that pull in our society. Do we have enough time for culture? Are we putting money into cultural programs in the schools? Or have we, that's the first thing that goes, first thing they cut, you know.
Yes.
So you have to think about that. Homeschooling certainly is a great place of inspiring that creativity.
Did you happen to homeschool your children at any time?
Just my youngest. My others, you know, homeschooling wasn't really on the forefront at that time, and mine were so bright. They were in these gifted programs in schools that had that, and you know, two of the two oldest boys are rocket scientists, you know, so they just level up their thought process. But I have 6 grandchildren being homeschooled. Two of my 2 daughters homeschool their children, and I help with that a little bit.
I know that when you said that your 2 oldest boys were rocket scientists, that you were not being facetious. They really are.
Yeah, well, I always say it's really because they wanted to find my mind. They thought I was maybe out in space somewhere.
Oh my goodness. So when you speak and you teach and Christ has given you these crazy, wild opportunities and you go through the door, you're bold to go through the door. I'm not sure that I would have been able and willing to go do that. Travel to Russia by myself, and that's just my mind. It just takes me someplace else.
Can I back up a little bit and tell how some of that happened too?
Please, yes.
I told you how it happened that they contacted me. On my end, just before Christmas, we had moved to Maryland. All my speaking died because I had no contacts. I was out there, you know, like a carnival barker, don't you want me to come speak? Mm-hmm. And I said, all right, Lord, maybe speaking is a point of pride. If it is, if I'm up there and it's not you and it's me, then I don't want to do it. That's okay. If you want me to speak, even if maybe it's not right now, just give me one little sign. Just have someone, anyone, contact me and ask me to speak that I have not contacted. Mm-hmm. Within 24 hours, I heard from Russia, and I said, well, Lord, I was sort of thinking as far away as Baltimore. But if you're calling me to Russia, I'll go.
I would go under those circumstances too.
And it was very similar when I was called to go speak in Malaysia, where I had said, you know, once Daniel gets to high school, anywhere you want me to go, I'll speak. And I lived in Miami then. I thought maybe as far away as Orlando. And the call I got 2 weeks after he was in high school, I was in Malaysia speaking in Kuala Lumpur.
Oh my goodness. Well, the places that he's taking you, for the most part, they're really lovely, breathtaking places, aren't they?
They are. They're also communist Muslim countries. It's really very interesting as to where I have gone.
I would think that your softness would, which is a wonderful trait, would be a real asset in that kind of an environment. Someone who was, you know, pushy and aggressive, you know, they would rub shoulders with people in the wrong way, I think, probably.
Well, I did have an interesting custom visit in Malaysia when I got over the border. They wanted to go through my bags, and they kept pulling these things out, trying to figure out what it was, and I kept saying, puppets, and they couldn't understand. I finally put one in my hand and started talking with it because I was doing a creative ministry conference and teaching on using puppetry. Some of my books are puppetry. And then they just started laughing and thought, okay, she's all right.
Maybe they thought nobody could really make that up. It had to be true.
Well, I had one full suitcase, just puppets.
And that ended up being your first book, didn't it? Puppetry?
Yes, actually. Mm-hmm.
Way back. We're going to get to that in just a moment too. You speak so, even though you don't always go to Russia, you are open to speaking engagements on local and national and regional events still?
Yes, wherever. I'll go. If God calls me and tells me it's safe, I'll go there. I do check things out. We should do that.
You also present at writers' conferences.
Yes, this spring and summer I was at the Blue Ridge Conference and the Montrose Conference, and before that I was at the Florida Conference. But I do a lot of different ones. I try to limit myself to 3 a year, and sometimes, like, I've done SCBWI, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, or others that are not normally Christian in the name.
When did you go to your first writers' conference, Christian Writers' Conference?
1994. I had been praying and felt that God wanted me to write. He actually gave me a vision, and a painting followed the vision within hours to write. Started writing, and I was bringing things to the post office to mail out, and most of them had something wrong. I could only mail one, and on my way home, I heard about American Christian Writers and their conference, and I'm a mathematician, so the number just stayed in my head, and a couple days later, I decided to call them, and I went.
Okay, some of that is just blowing my mind a little bit, that you're a mathematician, which I didn't know. I've known you for many years. I didn't know. Didn't know that. And the phone number stayed in your head for several days. I can't keep it until I write it on the notepad. I lose it before I've written all the digits. Oh, my goodness. Now, you also do something that's very interesting, that's new on the trending market. It's not brand new as of yesterday, but it's still relatively new. Few people are using it to market, and it's your Facebook Live show. Tell us about that, please.
Yes, I do Facebook Live, Cooking in the Kitchen with Karen, or Cooking and Crafts, I should say, once in a while, and I want to do more as Christmas is approaching. That weekly at Thursdays, I try to do 4 p.m. unless I'm on grandma duty and have to pick up a grandchild, then it's 5 p.m. So I do a bread cooking show or crafting, and some of that included how to make a bread plate, and as well as bread centerpieces, besides just baking the breads and making a puppet one day. I did that too. So it's just kind of fun, and I'm surprised I get hundreds of people coming in and watching that and commenting over time. But this goes into our marketing and things. I don't just do the Facebook Live. There's a little bit behind it.
Yes.
All the Facebook Live and cooking is going into a cooking course that I'm doing for the homeschool market with This Old Schoolhouse magazine. And so I take those Facebook Lives, put them up on YouTube, and the course links into those YouTube's video clips. So you can get more mileage by piggybacking what you do.
Yes, and you're so good. It just rolls off your tongue. I've had lunch with you before, dinner with you before, and there's just clicking off, and you see connections. It's one of the things that I like so much about you, and one of the ways that you stand out. You see connections where other people do not.
Yeah, it's just, that's how God wired my brain. And if I'm with someone and they want help with marketing, I just pray, and God just kind of lets loose like a popcorn popper. It all starts popping in my head.
So, and also one of your books, you've got three. Three came out last year in 2017. Did you intend for them to launch 3 in 1 year?
Well, yes, I did know that was coming. The year that I had 4, one was supposed to be the year before, so it wouldn't have been more than 3. So, yes, the thing I did not plan on last year is 2 of the books came out in August, and they were supposed to be a little more spaced apart, but we had Hurricane Irma that came right afterwards, and all the promotion for the fall, all the speaking, a lot of other things, even radio in Florida was canceled because of Hurricane Irma and all the destruction down my way. So I feel like I'm still catching up on some of that marketing, but that's okay. As long as the book's in print, you can keep marketing.
Yes. Good point to make. And this year, are you releasing any? And you haven't so far. Do you plan to for the year?
No, I'm just in, have a little piece in a book that's coming out that Michelle Cox is doing. And that is a devotional related to a really fun TV show that I like, which is The Heart. Takes place in Western Canada on Hallmark, and the name is escaping me right now.
It'll come back to you.
Yes. So
It's based on the book is based on the television show, or vice versa?
Yes, the book is based on the television show. It's a Christmas one. So it has recipes and stories and things in it. And I just did there's a recipe of mine that's in there.
Okay, a recipe. Okay. So have you always cooked? I know you said your whole family did, men and women, and you have also done the bread. But is that across the board? You're just a cook?
I love cooking. I've cooked my whole life. My relatives had dairy farms, so I would go over to like my Aunt Peg's house in the morning. The men were, milking the cows. They'd come in for a big breakfast, and I'd help her fixing that. And I, would go to grandmother's, great grandma's, and make breads with them, and be at the restaurants and be cooking there. So yeah, I just grew up with all of this and cooking at home. And then, you don't work with these midshipmen and these Coast Guard cadets without having them to your home for a big spread and lots of food for them. And so, and when you're cooking for 30 cadets or 30 midshipmen, it's more like cooking for 50 people or more. Because they're out there using up a lot of carbs in their running, their workouts, and everything else they do, and they come in and they're hungry.
What was your husband's name?
Jim.
Jim. So I can imagine, I never had the pleasure of meeting him or knowing him, but I can just imagine that your home was a safe haven for these young people.
Oh, yes, and a lot of fun. My husband was one of these people who always could, humor just rolled off his tongue, a very gentle, sweet, nice humor, and a lot of puns and other silly things. And so it made it a happy home.
And does your Facebook Live that you already mentioned, you tie it into the course, does it also tie into the book, the Gift of Bread recipes that you published last year? It
ties into the book, The Gift of Bread. And I certainly use recipes from there at times. And people who watch the video series, I invite them to come subscribe to my newsletter and get my free basic biscuit dough that I use for a number of things in various videos, as well as other things that I'm showing them. And I do give some of the insights into bread in the Bible that are in the book. Because it's a cookbook, a devotional cookbook.
A devotional cookbook, okay.
Yes.
Interesting. That's an interesting take. Are you the first one to do that you know of?
I don't know. There's other people that have cookbooks that have heartwarming stories and other things with them. And this has a heartwarming story for every chapter, devotional insight into bread in the Bible, and then the recipe or tips on making or serving bread.
Okay.
So it's a good inspirational cookbook thing. And I've always liked cookbooks that it had a little history or a little something else in them that I could read as well as use the recipes.
Yes. It connected you to the writer as well as the history of the people that were being written about, didn't it?
Yes.
Never even met them, but suddenly you're interested in them and their life. And then what about the other two books that you published last year? Do you happen to have them, Girl Talk, Guy Talk, and Devotions for Busy Families, right there with you?
I have the Devotions for Busy Families right here with me.
There we go.
Okay, and that one I'm actually doing a follow-up book. This is 52 Weekly Devotions for Busy Families. The next one is 52 Weekly Devotions for either families who serve or families who impact lives, because it will be on people, military, firefighters, police, missionaries, volunteers, anyone who does serve in any family who wants to know what that lifestyle is like. And there's a particular kind of frontline tip in each unit to help those families if they have to face deployments or the death of that firemen face and everything, of what to do for your family for those situations. I grew up not just with the restaurants and the military, but my grandfather was fire chief for 40 years and founded the fire department in my hometown, the volunteer fire department. So I had that aspect and had relatives who were police and things too.
I think it's an important point that you made, that these service-oriented professions are lifestyle professions. You don't clock out at 5 o'clock and go home and never think about it again until 9 o'clock the next morning.
Exactly. It's a different thing. It's a different experience to grow up with that and to understand what the family is like and what's different about it, that they face danger in a very different way than normal families do. Mm-hmm. They face separations. They face phone calls that can take them away in the middle of a Christmas morning or a birthday celebration or a church service or anything. And they've got to go if they're on call.
My husband talked about, before we were married, which was a while back, he talked about the possibility of becoming a police officer. And I was young and selfish. And I told him, I want you with me. If there's an emergency, I want you with me. I don't want you with everybody else. So I'm more selfish than the people who have selflessly given up their spouses, both husbands and wives, who have sent their spouse into danger, not knowing if they're going to come back or not knowing if they even need them themselves. They will have to deal with this emergency on their own.
Right. Jim was on military orders when Hurricane Andrew hit years ago and did $99,000 of damage to our house then. I don't know what the modern day price would be. And I had the 5 children at home with me because we were in a zip code that was told stay home. They don't do that any longer. The storm turned and we sustained a direct hit.
So maybe in all these different environments, you've been surrounded by people who loved you and cared for you and taught you, and you have returned that favor, haven't you, to those under your care, readers, children, midshipmen, and so forth.
Oh, I try. I love cooking for everybody and making crafts and laughing and having fun. So I do that. And my house is the house for people, the family, cousins and nephews and in-laws, and my own children come for holidays and other times for gatherings. I'll have 23 for a sit-down dinner or whatever.
There's always one family in the neighborhood, or one family in the greater broad family circle that everybody congregates at, and it's a nice feeling, isn't it, to serve all those people that you care about?
Yes, it is. It is. I'm still new here, so I don't have neighbors dropping in and things. I'd like that, but I do have family, so.
It's just a matter of time. Just a matter of time. Let's quickly talk about I met you right before or right after Stories of Faith and Courage from the Home Front was published. So that was 2012. Yes. So, and that won an award, didn't it?
It won a couple of awards, yes. It won the Military Writers Society of America Gold Medal. It won the ASA Golden Scroll Nonfiction Book of the Year. Mm-hmm.
And that's still going strong?
It's still going, and there's supposed to be something coming out soon. That there's an organization that is excerpting about 30 stories from it and printing off these booklets and going to be giving them to service families everywhere. And I'm not sure when that will release, but that, of course, will probably breathe new life into the book even.
Well, I was wondering, how does that copyright arrangement?
Well, it's being done through the publishing house.
I see.
And that's why I don't know when it's happening, because the publisher is working with them. I just know it's in process, and for this organization, it's the first time they're doing it, but they had done the fundraising to be able to do it. They've been working on it.
That makes more sense. So you're protected, and it's marketing, and you're not even having to lift your finger in that one instance.
Exactly. Other than I said, when it comes out, will they give me some that I can distribute when I'm in places and when I'm with military families? So that'll be good.
That would be, wow, that'd be great to be able to hand that out.
Yes.
Love that idea. So now you were going to help us understand how to answer the question that's such a basic marketing question, and it's so elusive. The answer is so elusive to many people. How do we, tell us first your version of your answer to the question, what's in it for them? What does that mean to you? And then how do we go about that process? We've got a brand new book ready to be submitted to the book proposal, and somebody's going to ask us this question one way or the other, one format or another. How do we find the answer, Karen?
Well, the first part you asked is, what does it mean? What's in it for them means, what's in it for your reader, for the person that you want to have the book touch their heart and things. So no matter what it is, you should know. But let's back up to before you ever wrote the book. Why did you write? And did you write down the benefits then? Did you think of your reader then? I do it from the beginning on, of what do I want the reader. So I'm working on my bread book. I'm going to be thinking about the person who doesn't know bread in the Bible, doesn't know what it means to say Jesus is the bread of life or what's the bread of presence. And they may be a young millennium who wants to learn how to bake bread and they don't know the basics. So can I teach them at the same time? Can I give them that? Somebody who maybe doesn't know, how do we sit around the table and enjoy a meal together? So I'm giving them heartwarming stories showing how we did it and that type of thing. And so then when I know that's built into the book, because I've had the heart for the reader the whole time, I can reach out to them. And I had my publisher, I asked them, and they did nice things. They did a recipe card that I could give people of Irish bread from my own heritage. That's hundreds are sold the week of St. Patty's Day at the family restaurant up in Connecticut. And I can share a little myself as well as the book when I'm doing that. Or I do a book like a Nature Girl, and I build it into the bookmark. And I don't know if we can come up close enough to see some of this. Let's see if I can get this right up by the camera. But I have an acrostic that, on that acrostic, what's in it for the reader? For the girls who are getting this book, recycle the crafty way. Experiment with energy. Grow snack gardens. So you see, immediately on a bookmark, they're finding out, hey, there's some fun things I can do while I'm learning. Yes. There's also love your natural beauty, investigate parks, nurture the earth, so the parent can say, hey, there's going to be some great education in it, not just the fun you're seeing. So the parent and child both see what's in it for them, because you have them, the buyer, who may be grandma or mom, if it's a children's book, or what's in it for me, the child who's seeing the book in the store. And that's part of what you want to see when you're going to be reaching out to a radio network to talk to them. What's in it for them? That's their listeners. So last year when the 52 Weekly Devotions for Busy Families came out, I immediately checked with one of the local radio stations and said, you're having a lot of problems and struggles because of Hurricane Irma now. Can I come on and just maybe together we can do the week on fear in here and anxiety? And that's what we did. And it happened, the radio host, her house, the roof was lifted off from a tornado. The rains came in and destroyed everything. So she was certainly ready to be talking about what happens and how do you take care of children or even adults who have fears. How do we discuss it as a family?
I like the fact that you are creative and you're talking about finger puppets one moment, and the next moment you're talking about how to survive and then thrive after a tornado that has shredded your house and ruined everything that you own. Those are very different topics, and they span the breadth of both creativity and fun and seriousness, but always you're weaving God in there, aren't you, in the Bible?
Always weaving God, and it's always sustaining the family, because whether you're enjoying things and using the puppets as a family, or ministering to others that way, or you're making the bread, or you're working on issues of hard times that we're going through, that is part of our family life, and we will bond together and keep closer if we talk about those things, as well as we need to think about how as a church, we're a family. Some people didn't grow up with a functional family, but they're in a church. They can reach out and join together and have a family there too.
I fall in that category, and it was a wondrous thing for me years ago, decades ago now, when I started going to a church and was enveloped in their care and their love. And, I was a crazy, rambunctious, didn't know how to behave in church, didn't know where to find anything in the Bible when the pastor would quote. I was always the one flipping. And then they just covered them around me and came around me and taught me, and they were gracious to me and let me learn. That was a safe environment.
Right. And, isn't that something to cherish and to know? And that's one of the things to think about those people. If that's your audience, then you want to think about the person who hasn't been to church. If your audience, and even if you're writing for family, think about the person who doesn't have family, who doesn't know what it's like, or whose family has just suffered something great, or whose family wants to learn more because they're homeschooling, whatever it is. You need to get into the minds of what it's like for them, whether you're doing it because you're reading books they read, you're watching the TV shows they watch, anything that you can do to help you understand that reader helps you connect with them. I write for the homeschool market, and it's been a long time since I did homeschool, and my children are homeschooling, but they're, a few hours away, and I do work with them, and we can Skype and do things. But I make sure that I understand that market, and so I go on Facebook groups and just listen in and sometimes chat and answer questions people have, because I want to know the heart of those people. I want to know what they are concerned about. And if you're in with those groups and you're learning about them, then you can do that what's in it for them, and you can market to their needs, because you want to give them a benefit that they're looking for. And isn't that why you wrote the book?
Yeah, yes. And let's make the point, which you already have alluded to it. This is not a list of features. This is not how many chapters, or it's a Bible study. These are benefits. This is the promise of the book, isn't it?
Yes.
Step by step by step.
That's what you're giving them in that book. Then if I have a book, Raising a Young Modern Day Princess, that I'm going to help you raise that child to be a princess. Now the subtitle, Growing the Fruit of the Spirit in Your Little Girl. So they're going to be the fruit of the Spirit. If they think of Galatians 5:22-23 right away, they're going to think self-control, patience. I want that for my child. So of course, we put those things on the bookmark.
Yes, yes. Yes.
Okay, so a princess is going to be prayerful. They're going to be respectful, and the parent's going to say, that's what I need. How do I raise them to do that, instead of being just wild little, hooligans or whatever you want to call them. So at any rate, you want that promise. You want to live up to it, both when you write the book, but also that's how you're marketing. And so you market out to those people. Are we in a society where there's a lot of anger? Can we do something to bring respect and peace and patience for them? Can we start that when they're a child? Might be for that particular book, but maybe you have a different book that's on peace or hope, that you can bring that element in, because that's what's happening in society. And we all want to sit down at Thanksgiving with a family that will get along for the meal.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, right after this past presidential election, there were people who would not even have Thanksgiving dinner with each other because they didn't vote on the same party ticket.
That's taking a little far, isn't it?
It is. And so, again, that's looking at what society needs, and does your book in any way address it?
And then what you said earlier, when it comes into the local or regional or national news, you can be the one to step in and say, you don't start with saying I have a book to sell, but you start out serving.
Right, yes. After Hurricane Katrina, I contacted the radio stations that, of course, weren't in the Katrina area. They weren't working. They didn't have power. But where those people were taken to have refuge during the time, to say, can I speak and address things? Because I went through Andrew, and I have a book on the home that talks about pain and how do we get through it. And I didn't even care if they listed the title of the book. I just wanted to help those people.
Yes.
And so that's what I was doing in that case, because that was part of why I wrote the book, and certainly what I wanted to help them with. Buying a book was not going to be their first thing that they bought after a hurricane, when they lost everything.
Yes.
Okay, so they were not my reading audience, but they were my listening audience that needed me to say, it's going to take a while, but you will get through it. I did, and you can. Later on, they could worry about a book when they had bookshelves again and a house to put it in.
Yes. And it's interesting that two different people can take the same actions, but when the motive is right, people can tell, even if they can't articulate it, they can tell this person is doing it for gain for themselves. This person is doing it to help us, which may not loop back around. But even if they knew for a fact it wouldn't loop back around and benefit them in any way, they would still offer it.
Oh, yes. And in fact, one of the fun things with my bread book, I have children watching it.
Really?
And I'll have more later as the homeschool market gets their course and they watch that. But I have my cousin's daughter. She says, my daughter has to watch that every week. And I have grandchildren, and I have some of their friends now watching it. And children are saying, I want to try that, Mommy. I want to make that. And so they are not my current readers because they're not at the reading level of that book, but they are current users with their mom of the book, and they'll be in the future looking for that type of thing. But isn't it fun? Because we're also growing literacy for them to learn how to use a recipe and follow it, books on bread, recipe cookbooks, so we're helping them just like books in one way or another.
Which is a dream for every good writer,
Yes.
writer. Let me check Facebook. We were so involved, I forgot to check Facebook like I usually do. Let's see if we have any questions or comments. I don't see any there. Let me check my page. None on my profile. What I'm wondering, while this is scrolling. Okay, not currently. Now, if you're watching us in the replay, or you tech into us live, and as we're almost coming to a close, feel free to ask questions of Karen or myself. We'll be glad to engage with you, answer your questions, help you in whatever way we can. So just because it's not live anymore does not mean that you're not welcome to watch, and it does not mean that we're not available, because we certainly are. Thank you so much, Karen, for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, and I hope it helps people think of the reader when they're pitching their books to them.
There's so much more that could be said there, and so many more things that you know. I'm wondering if you could come back another time for us.
We can, and maybe those people that didn't ask questions now can even give us a title of a book and what would I do with this book? How would I touch my reader with it? And how would I market it to do that?
That would be so fascinating. I've got a couple of people in mind. I'm going to put a bug in their ear and say, they'd like to come on with us, and we'll have some back and forth.
Right.
I know that you're busy. You have lots of fingers and lots of pots, but you're such a reservoir of knowledge. We'd like to take advantage of that without being taking too much advantage. Just that right amount of advantage.
Anytime I'm home is fine, and the last part of the year I'm always home more than the rest of the year.
Okay. When you're not going to Russia, because God said go to Russia by yourself.
Right. Well, this weekend is Nashville, so.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you again for joining me. Viewers, we thank you too. You are why we're here. We're here to serve you and help you understand. Hear the stories of Christian writers, authors, speakers, so that you can understand what you're missing, if anything, encourage you if you've got everything covered, answer your questions about publishing or writing, fill in the blank with whatever it is that you need in order to market your message online. Tomorrow, well, let me back up. This is Marketers on a Mission, episode number 122. My guest author, Karen Whiting. Tomorrow, speaker, author, and advocate, Brenda L. Yoder, joins me. We'll talk about her latest release, which sort of reminds me of you, Karen. Fledge, the name of it is Fledge, launching your kids without losing your mind. I love that title. I don't understand the Fledge, but she's going to explain that tomorrow. The subtitle is spot on. Brenda is also going to tell us what it's like to work with a professional editor. So there's that marketing element we always include in all of our interviews. Again, this show is designed for you to help you develop or refine your online marketing skills so that your message, which is God's message in you, can spread around the globe for Christ. We're here every weekday, 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern. Until tomorrow, Karen Whiting and I, Patricia Durgan, thank you for being here. See you tomorrow.